So you see, what is happening is that people are asking for a lot of information, Neelu, from the government, which the government doesn't want to provide. It's either embarrassing for the government, or the government wants to hide it, or the government feels that, that's not information that they want to share. You just mentioned somebody has asked for the list of people who graduated in the year 1978 when Prime Minister Modi said he has graduated. So they have simply asked for the names of people who graduated from the Delhi University in the year 1978, and that information is being denied. It's being said that this is a huge issue of privacy. So now what we are seeing is an attempt to remove all that information from the hold of people under the RTI law. And how is that being done? Neelu, if you look at the law, you will very quickly understand that it neither protects the right to privacy nor the right to information. Who holds the maximum amount of personal data in this country? It's the government. Who else holds it? It's large companies like Geo, like Google, who collect a lot of our data, and they are therefore holding that personal data which we want protected, so it can't be sold and we don't get all of this trouble that people keep getting. This kind of a data protection law goes against democracy, all principles of democracy. We have not got any response from them. They have not heard any of the petitions that we have sent them. They have gone ahead, they brought the law, and now they are going ahead and bringing rules.
Hello and a warm welcome to HW News Network, your one stop show, truth be told, for some engaging and thought provoking conversations. Right to Information Act has empowered millions of Indian citizens to seek information and also to hold the government accountable. And so far, the journey hasn't been too bad. But for the last few years, what we have seen is that the information under the RTI is not coming out very easily. You have to keep coaxing the government. And now the government is trying to bring in the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, which is further going to dilute the Right to Information Act, which of course is not good for any democracy. Now, what we are told is that the National Campaign for Protection of Rights, NCPRI, has submitted some comments to the Ministry of IT and Electronics on the data protection rules, and they have demanded that the government should not operationalize Section 44(3) of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which amends the RTI Act. So we'll try and understand as to what this provision is all about and how does the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill really demolish the RTI Act. And are we going to see, is there a possibility that if the government comes in with the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, is it the end of the RTI era? We'll try and understand all of this. Joining me now is transparency activist Anjali Bharadwaj with us this evening. Thank you so much, Anjali, for joining. And I believe you and many other activists who are part of your group have written comments, have given suggestions to the Ministry of IT and Electronics. Any feedback you have got? And I really want to understand from you that what are the genuine concerns evolving around the RTI Act because of the data protection bill?
Thanks, Neelu. Uh, the data protection law that the government has got, it's already been passed by Parliament. The Modi government introduced it in Parliament. It was pushed through. And essentially, one of the provisions of the data protection law is that it amends the Right to Information Act. Now, we all know that the Right to Information law was brought in the year 2005. It has been a very, very empowering piece of legislation. like you said, Nilu, for millions of people across the country. In fact, every year, about 6 million people file right to information requests in India. That's the highest globally. And what are they asking for? They are asking for information, granular information, which can help them hold the government to account. What is the kind of granular information that I'm talking about? There's a lot of corruption in our country. Anybody would agree to that. So if you are a poor person who has a ration card but is not getting their rations, or is being told, someone is being told that your ration card has not been made, people file RTI requests to ask the list of people who have got ration cards and for the list of people who have been given rations, so that they can actually check. Is it that they are not given their ration card despite the fact that their name is on the list? Or is it that other kinds of people who are not eligible are on that list and they are being denied their ration cards? Similarly, to know who has got how much ration, to do public monitoring, to do collective monitoring, and then using that information to hold the government accountable for if there is corruption happening. Similarly, for pensions, for scholarships, people use the right to information law to pull out records, lists of those who have got pensions, who have got scholarships, to make sure that only the eligible get those scholarships, that the right people get it, and there is no corruption in the system. Also, people want to know who is funding political parties. We know when the electoral bonds matter came up, it became such a big issue, and the Supreme Court said that people have a right to know who's funding political parties in a democracy. What are people asking for? They are asking for the names of donors. Who is the donor, the individual donor, the company, etc., who are giving funds. Now, what the data protection law has done is that it has said that under the right to information law, you and I, as citizens, cannot access any personal data anymore. Now, this is a huge problem. See, we understand that both the right to information and the right to privacy are fundamental rights. And we have to understand that the data protection law was brought in the name of protecting people's right to privacy. But if
No,
you
but
look at the law,
allow me to interrupt you here because you mentioned the data privacy. Recently, in the Supreme Court, we saw Prime Minister Modi's degree issue come up. And at that point
yes.
of time, Tushar Mehta, who was the Solicitor General, he said the right to know cannot be bigger than the right to know cannot be bigger than the right to privacy. And that at that time he had mentioned this particular thing. So how do you think that the government is really wanting to treat RTI, when you see it from the lens of the data protection bill?
Absolutely. So you see, what is happening is that people are asking for a lot of information, Nilu, from the government, which the government doesn't want to provide. It's either embarrassing for the government, or the government wants to hide it, or the government feels that, that's not information that they want to share. After all, like I said, in the electoral bonds case, there was an attempt to hide who are the donors of those electoral bonds, who are giving funds to political parties. In the case that you just mentioned, somebody has asked for the list of people who graduated in the year 1978 when Prime Minister Modi said he has graduated. So they have simply asked for the names of people who graduated from the Delhi University in the year 1978, and that information is being denied. It's being said that this is a huge issue of privacy. So what now we have to understand is that the government has
Fact,
brought
not
in
only
this
that, in fact, not only that, since we are talking about the degree issue, Tushar Mehta went to the extent of saying that we will show the degree to the court, but we will not show it to the people who are involved because it will embarrass. It will cause a lot of embarrassment, and the people who are seeking the information come with some ulterior motive. That is also what he emphasized on in the court.
That's right. That's right, Nilu. And we are seeing how there is a huge attempt to not share information, certain kinds of information. And under the RTI law, that is not allowed. The RTI law of 2005 required that all this information should be in the public domain. In fact, the Central Information Commission ruled that the degree related information, the list of people who graduated must all be in the public domain. So now what we are seeing is an attempt to remove all that information from the hold of people under the RTI law. And how is that being done? Let me just say that both, like I said, the right to information and the right to privacy are both fundamental rights. The Supreme Court of India has said that both of these are fundamental rights. They need to be balanced. And the Right to Information Act did a very, very nuanced balancing of that right. So, if I may just tell for the benefit of your viewers, Section 81J of the Right to Information Act said that in personal information which has nothing to do with public activity or interest, or would cause an unwarranted invasion of the privacy of any individual, cannot be shared. So, I could ask for personal information, but if it causes unwarranted invasion of the privacy of an individual or has nothing to do with public activity or interest, I couldn't access it. This already was written in the RTI law. There was no need to amend the RTI Act, because even if the government was worried that there should be data protection, privacy should be maintained, it was already provided for in the law. Now what the government has done in the name of data protection is that they have amended this clause 81J, and they have said all personal information will be exempt. Now, this is such a huge problem in a democracy. Look at the kind of things that are likely to become out of our reach. We all know that there are huge loans that are written off by public sector banks that you and I and citizens of the country have invested in. We have a right to know who are these big capitalists whose loans are being written off worth thousands of crores of rupees, when there is a small farmer or a small worker who can't give a few thousand rupees of loans. The banks go after them, but these big businessmen, they go away scot-free. So people have been asking for the names of people of the capitalists whose loans are being written off by the public sector banks. Now we are going to be told this is personal information, because personal information is the name of an individual. It includes the address of an individual. Anything that identifies a person is personal information. So now we'll be told, no, you can't have this information. Again, if you think about it, repeatedly in elections, we are hearing that there is a concern that names are being added and deleted arbitrarily. There are names that are added of people who don't live in those constituencies. There are names that are deleted of certain communities. So there is a concern. We have an electoral list in which our names are given, our addresses are given, even our photographs are given. This is done in all democracies to protect us against electoral fraud. Now, after this kind of an amendment that is being brought in through the data protection law to the RTI law, we will be told potentially that these lists have personal information, you can't have it. So how are you going to have free and fair elections? Again, we are going to be told electoral bonds or instruments like that, public money is being given to political parties by individuals also. So we will not tell you who are these individuals. It's personal
But
data.
what do
So
you
that
think,
means
Anjali, but you've given several examples, and which are glaring examples. People have seen it unfold. But what do you think is the intention of the government behind bringing in this digital personal data protection bill? Is the real intention is to demolish the Right to Information Act completely and bring in this new act in the name of protecting your data and protecting your privacy? Does that intention look more likely?
Neelu, if you look at the law, you will very quickly understand that it neither protects the right to privacy nor the right to information. So, yes, the government has brought this in to say that we want to protect the right to privacy, but actually it doesn't even protect the right to privacy. And I can explain why I'm saying that. The government has brought in this law to say that we want to protect your data. There are unwanted phone calls that we get, there is fraud that happens, we want to protect data. Now, who holds the
But
maximum amount?
allow me to interrupt you here because people did start talking about a data protection bill. You remember during COVID times when a lot of Aadhaar numbers got leaked, a list of
Yes,
phone numbers got leaked, and people said that why don't we have a data protection bill? So, do you think the phone
absolutely.
is going to be protected once that bill is there?
Yes, so that's what exactly what I was going to say, Nilu. We needed somewhat a protection of personal data. Who holds the maximum amount of personal data in this country? It's the government. Who else holds it? It's large companies like Geo, like Google, who collect a lot of our data, and they are therefore holding that personal data which we want protected so it can't be sold and we don't get all of this trouble that people keep getting. Now, what does this law do, however? The data protection law says that nobody can collect personal data without consent. Nobody can process that data without consent. And it has a lot of obligations on anyone who collects and processes personal data of people. But there is a catch. The law says that the central government will decide who will not be covered by the law. Now, this is such a dead giveaway, Neelu, because now we know that the central government will say that the UIDAI, which has all the Aadhaar data, it can easily say, no, no, this is not covered under the law. It can easily say that Geo is not covered under the law or Google is not covered under the law. So, who is the law for? And this is a very big problem. This, if you read the law, there is a lot of arbitrary power that the central government has kept to itself to say that all this, anyone who collects personal data will not be able to do it without very strong obligations, but we will decide who can do it without all those obligations. So now when a Neelu Vyas puts together a list of people who she sends a link to her show, she will be a data fiduciary under the data protection law, because you have the numbers, the names of people, and therefore you will be told you are a data fiduciary. But the government might turn around and say that Geo is not, because anyone who raises uncomfortable questions about the government, any NGO, any campaign, any journalist can be told that you're a data fiduciary, you will not collect any personal data. And look what the law says about anyone who violates any provision of the law. Under the data protection law, the government has set up a data protection board. That board is a completely Sarkari board. It's going to be set up by the government, its management is going to be done by the government, and that board will have the ability to impose penalties up to 500 crore rupees on every violation of the law. So, can you imagine that if anyone complains about anybody having some personal data which they say you did not take proper consent on, or you violated the data protection law, it doesn't matter that you are a single journalist, it doesn't matter you are a small NGO. If you're collecting any personal data, you are covered, and you could be you could be penalized for up to 500 crore rupees. Neelu, what this law is doing is that it is trying to completely give control of all personal data in the country to the central government. The central government is saying, "Hum तय करेंगे." We will decide who can collect personal data, who can process personal data. We will set up a board which will penalize anybody for any violation. We will decide who cannot be penalized and who will be left out of the ambit of the law. And the government is saying we will not give any citizen any personal data under the RTI law. So we will not must understand, Nilu, your question was very pointed, and it was bang on, because what the government is doing through this is that it's neither protecting right to privacy nor protecting the right to information. It's just consolidating control on personal data for itself. The government is saying, hum लोगों की व्यक्तिगत सूचना कलेक्ट करेंगे, we will collect people's personal information through Aadhaar, through biometrics, etc. We will not give it to any citizen, even if there are very important reasons, like I said, to fight corruption. People are using personal data information like that in our country for those kinds of things. When we say that under Narega nobody got their wages, one of the ways of checking is exactly this, that there is a database which is online today, which says who was enlisted, who was enrolled, how much money have they got. And after this law becomes operational, that database will most likely be brought down, because under the Data Protection Act, the government is saying we will not allow anyone to access such kind of data. So there are two things that are happening under the Data Protection Act, Neelu. The government is saying that as a citizen, you and I cannot access personal data under the Right to Information Act. And that's such a huge blow, because under the RTI law, people were using personal data, accessing it to demand accountability from the government. Say that, tell us who funded the PM Cares Fund. They're asking who funded electoral bonds. They're asking questions on NPAs, non-performing assets, who's running away with our money. They're asking questions on corruption that's happening. See, even when big ticket corruption happens in contracts, tomorrow the government under the data protection law will say we will not tell you the name of the contractor, because it is personal information of the contractor. So this is basically, on the one hand, becoming a way to make sure that we cannot access personal data, personal information from the government. This is very, very perverse. On the other hand, the government is saying that we will decide who will be covered under the data protection law, and we know that the government will most likely exempt itself and its cronies. And all of those people who are really people who are holding large amounts of personal data will be exempt. And people who ask difficult questions, people who the government finds inconvenient, they will be told, you are a data fiduciary, you cannot even collect personal data. So that means, as a citizen, I will neither be able to collect personal data through surveys, etc., nor will I be able to access personal data through the RTI law. Now, this law, the Data Protection Act, was passed, Neelu, last year, and it has not become operational because the rules have not yet been passed. The rules are now in the draft stage. We are told in the next few months, the rules are going to become operational, they'll be promulgated, and this law will kick in. That will effectively mean the end of very, very critical kind of journalism. आप ये सोचिए, when a journalist who's really doing their job in a democracy goes out to do a fact finding, they will write down details. They will find out names of people, write them down, who was killed in a riot. They will find out, what happened in a particular crime. Their names will be written. They will be told you are a data fiduciary. And if anywhere there is a way to file a complaint and that happens, they could be penalized. Similarly, all the accountability seeking groups, campaigns, NGOs that make lists, ration cards, who don't have those cards, who doesn't have pensions, who's indulging in corruption, all of that information will be denied to people. So what we are seeing effectively is a very, very dangerous situation which we are going towards, where the government is saying that we will control personal data fully. We will collect it, but we will not give it to citizens. And we will not allow citizens to collect it so that nobody can question, nobody can hold those who are in power to account. And Nilu, these are very serious issues when we are talking about, public funds, the use of public funds, corruption in public funds. We are talking about violation of human rights. It is very important for people, for journalists, for researchers, for citizens to have personal data at many times. We
Yeah,
are
but then
not saying
it's very clear that it seems that in the name of digital data, digital personal protection data bill, they are trying to completely finish off the RTI. And let's be honest, that the government doesn't need an RTI at this moment, and they will try and put out all the stops to just put the RTI Act into the grave. It seems like that.
it certainly would appear that the government does not want to share very, very critical information with people, which is important to hold the government accountable. Like I said, Nilu, it is impossible for citizens in a country like India to make sure there is no corruption, to hold their governments to account. It is impossible for citizens to raise their voice against human rights violations if they don't have information. So, a democracy, and look, this is not anything new. The Supreme Court is repeatedly saying that the right to information is a fundamental right. In a democracy, people have to have the right to information. And what the government is doing through the Data Protection Act is that it has basically said, we will not give you any personal information. And let me again state this, Nilu, we are not interested in vicariously seeking information. We are not saying if somebody is unwell, I want to go to a hospital and I want their health records. That's not what is being said. The RTI law already had a provision in Section 81J to protect unwarranted invasion of privacy of individuals. And 81J, our research has shown, is one of the most used exemptions. So 81J has been used very widely in the past 20 years in our country to deny information where a lot of the information is not being sought in a manner that is correct. Because we don't want a system where people are troubled through vicarious requests for information that was already there. Why did the government need to change that part of the RTI law? There was no need. The government already was not giving information under Section 81J, which is an exemption clause in the RTI Act, saying that, look, we don't want unwarranted invasion of people's privacy. Then where was the need to bring in this kind of an amendment? In fact, there was a committee that was set up under Justice A.P. Shah, which clearly said that to bring a strong data protection law, you don't need to amend the RTI Act. So the provision to protect privacy was already there in the RTI law. By making this amendment to the RTI law, the government seems to be showing its intention very clearly. The government is rattled. The government does not want to give information to people where corruption is happening, where quid pro quo is happening, where the government is feeling embarrassed that somebody is asking for information and lists of students who studied in a certain year when the prime minister says that he has obtained his degree. The government doesn't want to give information on electoral lists. Now, we are is that what we call a democracy? That is the real question. And these sorts of things become very, very problematic if the government, like it came into power in 2014, saying that we are against corruption, we are going to enhance transparency. If this is no way to amend the law, to basically say to people that such important information will not be shared with citizens henceforth.
Right.
So this
But
is a huge, huge blow.
yeah. So, towards my last question to you is that you and several others have given suggestions to the Ministry of IT and Electronics. Do you think that they will be taken into consideration when the real intention of the government is quite visible, that they don't want the RTI Act, they don't want to answer on the critical questions? So, the suggestions which have been given by people like you, are you hopeful that the government will consider those that kind of a feedback which you have given?
Neelu, we are always hopeful, but unfortunately, so far, There has been no response from the government. It has been at least 3 years since we have been trying to engage with METI, with the ministry, with the government to say, don't bring a data protection law of this nature. Not just the campaign on right to information, even the campaign on the right to privacy has repeatedly written to the government saying this is a law which is dangerous. Don't bring it. We have so many petitions that we have given to the government, to the Ministry of IT and Electronics, to say that this kind of a data protection law goes against democracy, all principles of democracy. We have not got any response from them. They have not heard any of the petitions that we have sent them. They have gone ahead, they brought the law, and now they are going ahead and bringing rules. Of course, when the government says that we are opening something up for consultation, we will give our comments. We have continued to do that because in a democracy, we believe that it is our duty to engage. And therefore, we have sent these comments. But so far, we have no reason to believe that the government is listening to anything that people are saying. It's very, very unfortunate. And even if you look at the way this government is going about doing consultation, it was only in English. In a country where you are going to impact through this law the last person on the streets, some ration card holder somewhere, there's some Manrega worker somewhere, how can you just do a consultation in English? How can you do it only online? All the feedback was asked for online. We've been saying do it in different regional languages, do it offline, so that you actually reach the real people whom it's going to impact also. But there has been nothing that has been taken on board. So I think it's very, very unfortunate, it's very problematic, and I would say that looking at this particular law, it appears very clear that the government is neither interested in being accountable by giving information to people under the RTI law, nor is the government committed to protecting privacy of citizens. The government is simply saying that the central government will control people's data. They will decide who will have it and who will not have it. And certainly, they have left enough provision in the law to say that if they want some of their cronies, they want some people to have the data, they'll exempt those people from the law, and the rest will neither get the information under the RTI law, nor will they be able to collect it. So this is a very, very dark day for democracy.
I don't think anything can be more unfortunate than this, but we'll have to wait and watch how things unfold. You all have given the feedback, so let's hope for the best. Thank you so much, Anjali, for joining this evening on HW. Thank you.
Stay ahead with our cutting edge news app. Instantly access the latest shorts in just 1 minute and breaking news in just 50 words. Download now for a smarter, faster news experience.